What is up, guys? Rick Kakis here, and today, after far too long, we have another Anthem update discussing the latest news and information on BioWare's new game. Today, we have a lot to cover because over the weekend, during Paris Games Week, Anthem did a live stream. This live stream revealed a bunch of new stuff. They actually streamed about half or a little bit more of a mission, so we have brand new gameplay to analyze and all that stuff. That's what we're going to be focusing on in today's video, so let's get started. So, the first things first, what the heck is going on in this mission? Like, what's the background for what you're about to see in the background gameplay? So, this mission is called the Lost Arcanist, and your objective is to go and find the Lost Arcanist, Matthias. Now, I think we do have a picture of Matthias. I'll show it on screen right now, and he is an Arcanist. Now, what exactly is an Arcanist in the world of Anthem? Essentially, these are kind of like the researchers, the scientists who are trying to uncover exactly what the Shaper relics are all about, what they do, how to potentially even utilize them and control them. They're the ones forefronting the research, whereas your faction, what you're playing, you're a freelancer. You're more focused on exploration. That's kind of what freelancers are all about. That's your faction, is going out into the wilderness, trying to find things, uncover secrets, and kill threats. Whereas, another Anthem faction would be the Sentinels. These are the people that also have the javelin suits, but unlike the freelancers, their view is not on the outside world on exploration. Their view is much more on the inside of the walls of Fort Tarsus. Their job is to keep Fort Tarsus and the people safe. So you have these different factions throughout Anthem. Arcanists, again, are one of them, the scientific faction. So that's it for background. Now let's focus on what's happening in the gameplay. Well, thankfully, the person playing is maining a Storm. The Storm and Interceptor javelins are definitely the two javelins that we know the least about. The very first gameplay trailer that revealed Anthem to the world starred the Ranger as a main, and the Colossus was also present, the tank javelin. And then in the E3 gameplay trailer, we had the Colossus as the forefront. We haven't really had a full gameplay trailer as the Storm or the Interceptor being the main thing that's being showcased until basically right now. So this is actually pretty exciting. And the first thing you're probably going to notice the Storm do is hover. The Storm has a really interesting hover mechanic that they went a little bit into within this live stream. Essentially, as the Storm, you'll see that when you're hovering in the air, you actually have a shield around you. Now, from the gameplay we've seen with the other javelins, this is not the case. This is unique to the Storm. And this shield is actually representing an in-game shield. And according to the developers, you are actually harder to kill when you're hovering. You are meant to be hovering. You are meant to be raining down your elemental attacks from above. And therefore, you actually have increased protection in the form of the shield while you are hovering. So if you drop to the ground, if you try to engage enemies from there, you're actually going to be at a weaker state, which is a really differentiating factor from the other javelins who don't have this. Now, moving on from there, let's talk about flight. So, the Storm Javelin is actually going to have a little bit of a different flight animation than the other two javelins, utilizing the elements rather than, rocket thrusters like Iron Man. But there's a little bit more going on here. So before, we knew that you could extend the time that you fly. So flight is not indefinite. You're going to have a little bar that fills up, and when it does, you'll overheat like you can actually see right here within this live stream. Then you're going to come crashing to the ground, and you have to wait a bit for your thrusters to cool down, then you can start flying again. In fact, not only is the flight animation different, but the sprinting animation is different as well. Here's what it looks like when your Storm sprints. But like I was saying, you can extend that duration by doing certain things. Previously, we knew that there would be waterfalls, and if you flew in a waterfall, like underneath a waterfall, the water would hit your thrusters and you would cool off, and then it would reset your timer and you could fly even further. Couple more things revealed in this live stream that will also impact flight. So, number one, you don't actually have to, go right through waterfalls as the only thing to interact with water. If you skim the surface of water, that's going to cool your jets, and that will also extend the time at which you can flight. So if there's a big body of water, skim along it and you can just fly really, really far. In addition to that, it seems like going down, like pitching your javelin down, is also going to cool your jets. You're not using your jets if you're basically falling, so if you sharply head downwards, that is not going to use up, fuel as well, or I should say heat up your thrusters as well. So the way in which you fly can really manipulate how long you can fly for, which is really sweet. Now, moving on from there, let's talk about the abilities the Storm has access to. Number one, we have the ability to call down a lightning bolt from the sky, smash the ground, and deal what looks like decent damage over an area of effect. Now, we've somewhat seen this before, but what's also interesting is the second ability. This will shoot out ice spikes. And I think this is the first time we've seen this in the first person perspective. You could see a Storm using this if you went to the 2018 E3 show, but what's interesting about this is it isn't just a static on or off ability. Now, I think this is going to surprise some people because mostly when you have all these abilities, you press a button and you utilize the ability, and that's about it. Right? We have grenades and melees in Destiny working the same way, and the lightning bolt works like that. You press a button, the lightning bolt comes down. But with these ice spikes, as you can see, you actually have ammo. Ammo for an ability, and we see right here 25 out of 25. So that means that the user can hold or press this button for a length of time, and you're going to have up to 25 of these ice spikes that come out, so you can potentially shoot 10 at one guy, move on. They would probably recharge as you do so you're back to 25 for a big engagement. You can just lay down all 25 in an area, and then maybe it would take a little bit longer to recharge, but that's a really interesting feature of not all abilities being either use or don't. They have actually metrics in which you can use a certain amount of an ability. And frankly, that feature of this ice ability combined with a whole nother ability that has its own separate recharge time, judging from the gameplay, you basically don't have to shoot your guns as a Storm. You run around ice spike and stuff, and then, once they're frozen, hit them with the lightning bolt, go back to ice spiking. That seems so much fun. Now, apart from that, we also see a melee is present. This seems more like just a basic melee. It is going to be different for each of the 4 different javelins, but then we also have the Storm's ultimate ability, and we finally got to see it in action, and here it is. It's hard to explain, so just look at the awesomeness occurring on your screen, but essentially you utilize all of the different elements, and you can see that next to the target just above, there's going to be the different symbols representing the different elements popping up. There's a little symbol with a lightning bolt to represent electricity, then there's a little icicle symbol to represent the cryo, and then there's the fire symbol to represent shooting flames at enemies, and then there's one big final attack where a meteor seems to crash down from the sky into the ground. So you target a bunch of poor enemies, then you electrocute them, freeze them, set them on fire, and then call down a meteor to strike down their poor electrocuted, frozen, on fire bodies, which seems like a little bit of overkill, but also seems very awesome. All the ultimates so far have been nuts. I mean, back to the first trailer when we saw the Ranger utilize the missile salvo thing, and that just looked insane. How are they going to top that? Well, apparently they did with the Storm. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Interceptor is the other class that we really haven't seen too much of, but there was one Interceptor along for the mission, and they actually showed off its ultimate ability. So, the Interceptor seems to be kind of a mobility and melee focused class. In fact, its ultimate is all about the melees. As you can see, it whips out these dual blades and you just go to town. Somewhat similar to, I would say, Blade Dancer in Destiny 1, But something else that the developers mentioned is that while you are cutting through enemy after enemy after enemy with your melee focus ultimate, you actually have dramatically increased defense. They mentioned that you are going to be so much harder to kill, if not impossible to kill basically, when you are in this ultimate. So that's actually a far cry from what we've seen, you know, with the Destiny 1 Blade Dancer. That was relatively easy to kill. That's a lot of utility there. If you get a huge damage reduction increase when you activate this ultimate, that could be used for utility purposes, going and reviving teammates, tanking an objective. That's actually really, really interesting. Now, we actually do get to see the Interceptor do some more things in the background gameplay. Right here, we see it jumping around from enemy to enemy and using melee attacks. Now, this doesn't necessarily seem like an activation of an ability, but rather this could just be the Interceptor's normal melee. If it is a melee-focused class, it does make sense to have a powerful base melee attack, and that could be what we're seeing here. Another cool thing is, way in the beginning of the gameplay, someone throws out like an acid ball, and the developers actually talk and say, who was it, the Ranger? And it says, no, the Interceptor. So the Interceptor does actually have some ranged abilities. It's not, you know, 100% melee focus. This acid ball is an example of something that can shoot at enemies further away. And acid is neat because, you know, that's another element. It's an element that the Storm doesn't seem to have access to. So perhaps the Interceptor and a few other classes will be the only classes that have access to acid, whereas the Storm has, of course, you know, fire, cryo, electricity, as we've seen. So spreading out the elements to be available for certain javelins and not others, that's pretty neat as well. Now, if you're thinking, well, that looks sweet, like I really want to play the Interceptor, or I really want to play the Storm, when will I unlock it? Am I gonna play, you know, the entire game before I finally get access to the Storm? Well, actually, no. It was recently confirmed in a tweet by a BioWare developer that the way you actually unlock your different javelins is not that you're going to unlock, you know, the Colossus at level, 6, then the Storm at level 12, then the, you know, there's not a preset path. You're going to reach certain points in which you get to unlock a new javelin, and then you just get to pick whatever javelin you want to unlock. So if you're looking at the Storm and you're thinking, this looks sweet, you can unlock it right away as the first javelin you unlock and then main that for the rest of the way, which I think is a really cool way to do things. And so guys, that's it for today's Anthem update. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Anthem content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.